Okay, I'm going to do a tutorial on how to change a pair of jeans into a skirt. And this is a little girl's pair of jeans. They're size 4T. So we're going to start by ripping the seam all the way up from the pant leg all the way up and on both sides. And I'm going to also be doing it all the way up the crotch part here. And also on the back, we're going to be ripping that part up also. Probably just from here over. You don't need to rip it all the way up, but just like from here down. So we'll start at the bottom, because for me it's easier to start at the bottom. And I just open it up and find a seam, and just as soon as you start ripping the seam, it will become easier to undo the whole thing. So I have my seam ripper in one of these threads here, and I'm hanging on to this camera, so it's kind of hard for me to show you, but you just pull it up in an upward motion and it will rip that thread, and then the whole thing will become a little bit looser and it will be easier to get at the thread. Okay, so as you can see, I've got some of the seams ripped out now, and there are still some threads sticking out here that I'm going to continue to pull all the way up. So it is a little bit of a time-consuming process, but once you get it to this point, it definitely becomes easier to rip them out. Okay, now I have it all ripped up one leg, and as you can see, there are a lot of strings. I did pull off quite a few. There's my big pile of strings there, but there's still a lot of strings here, and it's kind of messy. So this is where the scissors come in handy, and I'm just gonna cut off some of these strings to make it a little bit more neat, which makes it easier to work with later when you're using your sewing machine. Okay, what you'll see now is I have got all the seams ripped out. I ripped out the crotch area, maybe halfway almost, and all the way down both legs, both undone, and in the back. It's also ripped, and you can always rip up more if you need to. But anyway, so what we're gonna do is, you'll see, I usually like to, you could make this so that it's a straight seam down the back if you didn't want it to curve, but I like the trendy look of the curve with this, this part of the seam, so this is probably how I'm gonna make this skirt. And so we'll end up sewing this part of it over this way along that seam there, and then you can either turn this in to make like a finished edge look, so you would just have to turn it in and pin it down, but I like mine kind of the rough edge, so I'll just leave it. The same for the front as well. I usually just leave this portion over like that, and then we'll start this seam down with the rough edge. What you're also going to want to do is decide how long you want your skirt to be. This is for my 3-year-old daughter. Probably going to make it come to just above her knee, or maybe just to her knee. So that's going to leave us then with this gap in here that will need to be filled with some material, and so that's where your pant legs come in handy. You just cut the material from your pant legs and sew it as a placket in here, on the front and on the back, and that will make your finished skirt. So I'll be showing you how to do that. I've got my skirt cut now to the length. These are the pant legs that I cut off, the 2 panels that I have here, and these are what's going to be used for the extra material that you're going to need in between here. Okay, now what I have done is pinned down the front flap here where I want it to lay flat and be stitched. I've got one pin there, and I've got another pin here, just before the opening where I'm going to need a panel. This is the front of the skirt. On the back, the V is just a little bit wider. It goes over just a little bit further. You can either leave it that way and sew it down here, pin it and sew it. Or if you don't want it to be quite that far over, you can cut, you know, in a diagonal, however far you want it to. Okay, so as you can see, I just cut this off. It was right there. Just took the scissors and snipped it right off. Now I'm going to pin this down to this other piece, and we'll pin along this little section here, and then I'll show you how to make the panel. Okay, I am ready to start my panel. I have my front part pinned down where I need it to be, and I have this gap here, this hole that needs to be filled with material. So I'm going to take this pant leg, and it's pretty big. There's a lot of material here, so I really don't need this much material for this panel. I'm just going to cut up right here to make a smaller piece to work with because it makes it a little bit easier. Put the extra piece of material you have inside and inside the skirt. Lay it down flat. And then this piece wants to kind of curl under a little bit. I probably should iron it out so it lays flat. Then what I'm going to do is take a pen once I get it laid out, and I'm just going to draw. If you stick this in, I have it right side the way it's supposed to look right now, but before I would write on it, I would actually flip it over so it's on the reverse side, so you're not writing on the front of your panel. I'm going to take a pen and I'm going to just trace the section I need for the panel right here. And then when you're done with that, you're going to cut out a little bit further, give yourself a little seam allowance, and make yourself the panel, and I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so I took my pen and I marked along here and along here, and this is what you've got, so you can see what your panel needs to look like. So when I cut it out, I'm just going to cut a little bit along the outside edge, give myself a little bit of space. Not going to cut right on the line, just all the way around it. Give yourself a little bit of space there. Okay, I have my piece cut out, and now I'm going to fit it into this little crevice here. Should fit pretty well. I won't have a lot of extra room, but just enough. And I'm going to be pinning it so I know it will stay in place when I sew. So you're just going to take your pins, pin it into place, and then do the same for the back side, the back panel. Okay, now I have my panels pinned in. Got my pins in there on the front side, and I got pins in on the back side where the little tiny panel is, and we're ready to sew. I'm ready to go. I'm going to stitch up all along this side here, and then I'm also going to stitch along here. I'm going to try to make a stitch as close to the edge of that material as I can, because I didn't give myself a lot of space with the panel. And then I'm going to stitch along here as well. And because the rest of this is stitched twice, it's got two seams. I think you can see that there. I'm probably going to be doing a double stitch also, just to make it look more uniform. Okay, now I have sewn in my panels, and I did my double seams. All you do is just sew one seam along this side and then just do another seam along that side. I just followed the seam lines pretty much that were already on the skirt. That's pretty much it. There's the skirt from the front, and there's the skirt from the back. You're going to want to run some kind of a stitch along the bottom edge to keep it from fraying up completely. Sometimes I just do a straight stitch along the edge, and then it'll fray up to that point, but it won't fray beyond that. I have a little bit of rickrack here that I got. I think I'm going to just sew it onto the bottom of the skirt here. I think it would look kind of cute. Okay, so here it is. There's the skirt. I put a little rickrack on around the bottom. Turn around, Nellie. Let's see the back. Cute.